Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a deeply disturbing and highly charged topic, the UK grooming gang scandal. Now, while the crimes themselves are absolutely horrific and universally condemned, our specific focus today is actually on the media commentary surrounding them. We are going to break down a recent, very pointed segment from Sky News Australia. And just to be completely clear right out of the gate, we aren't taking any political sides here. Our goal is to objectively map out the exact claims, the arguments, and the rhetorical strategies this source uses to present this issue to a global audience.
So here is our roadmap for today. First, the grooming gang scandal. Second, proposing harsher legal sentences. Third, findings of the independent inquiry. And fourth, media, politics, and Elon Musk.
All right, jumping right into part one, the grooming gang scandal and framing the outrage.
This segment instantly anchors its entire commentary by pulling a quote from Reform UK leader Nigel Farage, who stated, "This appalling scandal shames us as a country in the eyes of the rest of the world." Notice what they're doing here. This strategically elevates the issue right from the start. They are framing it not just as a horrific localized crime, but as a catastrophic national failure that has completely destroyed the UK's reputation on the global stage. Building directly on that sense of national shame, the source directs its outrage at what it claims is a massive systemic failure. The argument they're making is that this abuse wasn't just isolated to a few towns. They claim it was allowed to perpetuate all across the UK, even reaching right into London. But it goes even further than that. The segment alleges that some safeguarding officers implicated in these failures are literally still working in similar roles globally today. And at the very top of it all, political leaders, specifically naming figures like the Mayor of London, are fiercely accused of living in absolute denial. Which brings us to part two, proposing harsher legal sentences and the political response.
So, how exactly does the source suggest combating these alleged systemic failures? Well, they highlight a very specific political response, a private member's bill put forward by MP Robert Jenrick. It's basically pitched as an absolute, uncompromising zero-tolerance approach. The proposed legislation demands that anyone convicted of these specific crimes receives life in prison with absolutely zero possibility of release, alongside immediate deportation where applicable.
To really put that into perspective, this kind of legislation would radically alter British law. A whole life order without parole is historically reserved for only the absolute most heinous offenses you can imagine. We're talking serial killers like Lucy Letby. By demanding this specific sentencing benchmark, the argument from the source is crystal clear. These grooming crimes must be treated legally as entirely on par with the absolute worst murders in the country's history.
Moving right along to part three, findings of the independent inquiry and analyzing those claims.
Now we get to the why. Why does the source claim this happened? The segment leans heavily on the findings of an independent inquiry led by Rupert Lowe. This inquiry points to what it calls an uncomfortable combination of factors. It specifically cites unfettered immigration and the localized accumulation of power. Crucially, the inquiry calls out shared demographic ties. Things like a shared religion of Islam, shared ethnic heritage, and language. The argument presented is that these specific cultural identifiers created a sort of perfect storm that allowed these gangs to operate and essentially shield one another.
And to back up those claims, the segment drops a pretty startling statistic. They cite the inquiry's claim that in certain northern UK towns, 1 in 7 Pakistani Muslim men were prosecuted for these crimes.
But you see, they don't just leave that number hanging there. They use that statistic to make a much broader and frankly explosive accusation. Because these are small, tightly knit northern towns, the source argues that a prosecution rate that high basically implies mass local awareness. Their ultimate conclusion: the wider community simply must have known what was going on, and therefore they were actively providing cover for the perpetrators.
Finally, we reach part four, media, politics, and the global spotlight.
The segment then pivots to critique the media landscape itself, alleging a really severe imbalance in how this story is being told domestically. According to the source, mainstream outlets like Sky News are essentially minimizing the story, mentioning the inquiry only in passing, while mainstream political authorities just remain in total denial. In stark contrast, they heavily praise the right-leaning network GB News, describing them as very hawkish on the issue and even crediting them for actively helping to fundraise to get the independent inquiry off the ground in the first place. And then comes the ultimate escalation. It is a fascinating rhetorical leap from a localized UK town scandal directly to a global mega-influencer. The source brings in billionaire Elon Musk.
Musk bluntly tweeted that politicians who ignored this scandal must face prison time. Now, the segment fully acknowledges that Musk is a highly polarizing figure, but they give him absolute credit here. The core argument they're making is that it literally takes a mega influencer's massive global spotlight to force the counter-pressure that local, mainstream media refuses to apply.
So, this all leaves us with a really huge question to chew on. How exactly does the digital spotlight of a global billionaire alter the pursuit of justice in deeply localized political scandals? I mean, when traditional media and local politicians are accused of failing, does a mega influencer swooping in force genuine, actionable accountability, or does it just polarize the issue even further on a global scale? It's definitely something to think about. Keep analyzing the media you consume, and I'll see you in the next explainer.